Mr. Ratner, your final remarks there about certain areas benefiting and others not, when the comment was made earlier that the anticipated average price of fuel here in the country is going to be $2.04 a gallon. I'm reminded that in about 80% of my communities that are not attached by road, and their fuel is either flown in or barged in, they're going to still be looking at $5.50 a gallon. So we don't all enjoy the same benefits. I want to talk about LNG just for a moment here. I mentioned the Energy 2020 white paper that we put down in 2013, and at that time I had said that there was this narrowing window of opportunity for LNG exports because of all the things that many of you have said here today, and a recognition that for Alaska, with the LNG that we have historically exported, for 40 years we exported limited amounts to Japan, and mentioned that we have exceptions to some of what we're able to produce in Alaska for a host of different reasons. But I've always said that our LNG opportunities are also subject to a narrow window, and we are pushing very hard to try to get our natural gas to a market, but we've got some logistical challenges that we're dealing with. And in the meantime, the politics, the geopolitics of LNG are playing out. The issues that you have mentioned, Ms. Palti-Guzman, are ones that I'm particularly paying attention to, and recognize that how we are viewed, we being Alaska, may be different than the resource that comes from the lower 48 in terms of the markets that we might be attractive to. And you indicate that Asia looks to be a less popular U.S. destination. I'm curious, and I'd direct this both to you and to Mr. Ratner, in terms of Alaska's LNG opportunities. Do you view that in a different, through a different lens than LNG, other domestic sources of LNG, or is it all in the same pot? Either one. Ms. Palti-Guzman.
Thank you for your question. I think if you look globally at all supply of LNG, potential supply of LNG, there will be stranded assets because there is too much of it. Now, the projects that are going to go ahead are the ones that will manage to make cost mitigations, that will have customers already on board. When I look at Alaska, we need to think about Asia, and Asia is not one block. The traditional buyers in Asia, Japan, South Korea, have declining demand or stagnating demand, but there are also a lot of uncertainties. In Japan, it's mainly related to the restarts of nuclear reactors, and there are ongoing deregulation in their own market. India and China, the two emerging economies, have huge upside for LNG demand. And then there is Southeast Asia, that is a growing niche market. So when we look at Asia, we need to distinguish between those different markets. And I still think that they are the growth motor for LNG demand globally, but we've seen in 2015 that their share in the global gas trade declined from 75% to 72%. And mainly it was related to a slowdown in demand in China because of the slowdown of the economy, but also less demand in South Korea and Japan.
Let me ask Mr. Ratner.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I mean, when it comes to Alaska, as you indicated, it is viewed as different for a gas, and DOE has said that in their permitting process of when they've granted permits for Alaskan projects. And I think that as far as Asia is definitely the most logical market given the proximity of Alaskan gas. And I think one of the things looking forward is also that any new project in Alaska is not going to be entering the market in the next 2 years. It's going to be entering further out. And so we need to see how the current low prices will affect demand globally, particularly in Asia, but that those are going to be factors of what type of market will the Alaskan gas, if it gets built, will it be entering at that time? And so I would expect that any new project in Alaska is going to take a good number of years to build the pipeline, build the facility, go through the permitting, et cetera, before it hits the market. And I think going forward, if you look at the current low prices, that's going to have a big impact on countries that may view, that currently don't import LNG, but may view it as an alternative fuel in the future that may benefit potential exports from Alaska.
And this is just part of the struggle that we have. People look at the prices today and say, well, this is a lousy time to make such an investment. And as I have mentioned, whether you're talking oil and the potential within ANWR, it's 8 to 12 years to build a pipeline that we're talking about for LNG is again about an 8 to 10 year prospect for a $50 billion project. So how you marry this up, get people away from the imperative of now and the concern over prices now and focused on where we're going to be a decade from now in terms of our need and our demand is a big challenge for us. Let me go to my colleague, Senator Heinrich.